Okay, welcome to IELTS Speaking, lesson 15 of my course for people ambitiously aiming for a 7.5 or who want to really get advanced language to get for 6, 6.5 and beyond. Lesson 15, this is part 3, advanced answers with part 3. So, recap of the advice. I always say this at the beginning because it's important and I want you to remember it, especially for part 3. It's good to have the combination of the correct language, ideas about the world, and discourse knowledge, because it's a back and forth, it's a bit of a discussion, it's a conversation. Discourse knowledge is important for all parts of the test, but especially part 3. So language, improving your language ability. Remember, it's not about really complicated language. Advanced English is about using lexical chunks naturally and correctly. Idiomatic expressions that native speakers really do use, mainly about natural common collocations, and the language that can be developed a lot, by the way, by reading. Language that can be developed quite a lot by reading contemporary news and opinion articles. I don't mean complicated opinions, just general things about the world. This will help you prepare for part 3 mentally and linguistically. So, discourse, the art of conversation, responding with your own thoughts, linking your ideas logically, managing discourse markers in a more native way, not rushing in your speech, speaking clearly without being hurried, pronunciation and speech rate, if you get them right, will improve your fluency score. Listen to online discussions between native speakers if you can. Get your ideas together. Ideas about the world. Take interest in issues at home and abroad and globally. Read about the world. It doesn't have to be highly academic or highly political, just stuff about the world. If you like sports, read about sporting news. Read also about what's happening in the world, key discussions, debates, topic of controversy or opinion. What local issues face you? So read about local issues. Face you, your country, your city, your group of friends, your area of society. What are people concerned about? What are people worried about? Think about this. Make notes. Digest it. Think about it in your own way and come up with some opinions about what you think. So part 3, remember, part 3 is based on the topic of part 2. It's a discussion with the examiner. It's about wider social issues, not your personal life. And it involves you giving opinions and supporting those opinions. So in this lesson, we're going to go into type of part 3 questions, living in the countryside versus city life, and environmental concerns. Those are the topics we'll cover, and the discussion techniques of describing similarities and differences and proposing solutions to problems. Okay, so 2 general topics that are very common, but we can use the lexis of in many areas of the test, and 2 common discussion technique types. So, part 3, open discussion activity, living in the countryside versus city life. So, what are some of the main differences between living in the countryside and living in the city? Because I come from a small town and I've recently moved to a large city, I guess this means I have some clear ideas about this. For example, one obvious difference is that cities are large, busy and noisy. As soon as you arrive in a city, you're struck by how much activity there is, all going on around you, in contrast to country towns that are generally peaceful, relaxing and calm. Cities, however, provide many more opportunities to get involved in cultural activities like the theatre, cinema and the arts, as well as sports. Cities also offer more in terms of job opportunities and chances to develop in a career. However, city life is more expensive, stressful and perhaps less healthy than the kind of lifestyle you might have if you lived in the countryside. Wow. That's obviously much longer than you will get the chance to speak in the speaking test in part 3. I know this. Okay? But I'm giving you a big answer in order that we can practice a lot of language that you might use. That's the reason. So remember this. Obviously, you won't have time to answer this massive chunk, unless the examiner is someone who really just sits back and lets you talk in part 3. Some examiners do this. They can do this if they feel you're doing well and you're describing things in detail. They might do this. But anyway, it's longer than in most tests. You'll be allowed to speak, but still some great language. Which approach did I take in my answer above? Let's listen again. Because I come from a small town and I've recently moved to a large city, I guess this means I have some clear ideas on this. For example, one obvious difference is that cities are large, busy and noisy. As soon as you arrive in a city, you're struck by how much activity there is, all going on around you. In contrast to country towns that are generally peaceful, relaxing and calm. Cities, however, provide many more opportunities to get involved in cultural activities like theatre, cinema and the arts, as well as sports. Cities also offer more in terms of job opportunities and chances to develop in a career. However, city life is more expensive, stressful and perhaps less healthy than the kind of lifestyle you might have if you lived in the countryside. Okay, so which method was I following? Did I talk about A and then B, or did I talk about some points of A and some points of B? Okay, either way is fine. Just think about it when people are giving an answer. When you're preparing, obviously you wouldn't think about this on the spot in the test. You think about this kind of thing while you're practicing and training yourself for part 3. Right, look at the logic. Which method was I following? Intro sentence, a discourse intro. Because I come from a small town and I've recently moved to a large city, I guess this means I have some clear ideas on this. This is only an introduction, remember. But it's a good, real native speaker one. Because you sort of personalize it, but you're not talking about yourself, you're just saying why you've got some experience and why you've developed opinions on this wider social issue. First impressions of cities I then go on to talk about. One obvious difference is how busy and noisy cities are. And then he contrasts this, I contrast this with the same aspect of a town. And then I go on to talk about a main point about the benefits of cities, the culture, the arts, the sports. I then contrast this with the same aspects of a town. So I then move on to another point that compares both career opportunities, saying that there's more career opportunities in cities. And then I finalize with a general point about the downsides of cities. So actually my method is a point-by-point method. I'm mentioning a good thing about cities and a bad thing, and a good thing about cities and a good thing about towns. You know, well, I'm going from one to the other, comparing the points rather than the categories. Doesn't really matter, but this is a good way for you to be aware of logic while you're preparing similarity and differences answers. So, cities, guide the answer, guide your answer. Introductory polite sentence. How cities are big, noisy and busy. How cities have more culture and art and sports. How cities have more career opportunities. How cities are stressful, expensive and hard. And each time I make this point, I compare it with a town. So that's why it's point by point. So planning your thoughts, a study tool. So, again, this is just for training. Obviously, in part 3, you don't have time to plan anything because you've planned it with me now. Life in a city compared to life in the countryside. Overview. Busy, active, noisy, bustling. Overview. Peaceful, relaxing, quiet. So this is how we look at the different points. We list the different aspects of life and then we compare them across a table like this. It's a good preparation method. Culture. In the city there is cinema, theatre, art galleries, sport, book readings, nightclubs, social life. In the countryside, however, culture, natural pursuits, gardening, plants, exploring nature, intimate environments. Cities, work, multiple work opportunities, small companies, creativity, competition. Work, fewer chances in the countryside, more likely to join a family business. What's the competition like? Make a note of it. Daily life in the city, expensive, stressful, transport and travel, maybe the bad air. Daily life in the countryside, cheaper, more relaxing, cleaner air. Transport between places might be easier. It might be more difficult. Make some notes, compare. So, think more when you're preparing and planning and comparing ideas. Very important to think more. Generate ideas and opinions on these topics. Break down your thoughts into these categories in the way that I've done, or in a similar way that I'm telling you to do. Write down notes, questions, doubts, organize the notes. Then practice answers. Think about if you disagree with any of your own ideas or agree with them. So let's get back to my answer. The language we'll practice to improve our Part 3 answers. So, what are the main differences between living in the countryside and the city? Again, because I come from a small town and I've recently moved to a large city, I guess this means I have some clear ideas on this. For example, one obvious difference is that cities are large, busy and noisy. As soon as you arrive in a city, you're struck by how much activity there is, all going on around you, in contrast to the country towns, which are generally peaceful, relaxing and calm. Cities, however, provide many more opportunities to get involved in cultural activities like theatre, cinema and the arts, as well as sports. Cities also offer more in terms of job opportunities and chances to develop in a career. However, city life is more expensive, stressful and perhaps less healthy than life in nice country towns. Okay, right. A natural, casual, personal introduction. Because I come from a small town, I've recently moved to a large city. I guess this means I've some clear ideas about this. Yes, Part 3 is about wider social issues, not you, but you can open with a short intro, drawing from your own experience. It's like starting with a reason to support what you're going to say. A natural, casual, personal introduction. Other examples. I've been thinking about this recently. I have a few thoughts on this. I was talking to my friend about this topic the other day. I've some ideas about this. I guess I have some interesting thoughts about this topic. Well, I was reading an article on this topic the other day. I think that one general example I give. So I start with this casual introduction and then I give one general example. For example, one obvious difference is that cities are large, busy and noisy. So I start with the most obvious, biggest difference. As soon as you arrive in a city, you're struck by how much activity there is. There's all going on around you. So I use this technique. A general example followed by a feeling and an immediate impression. Nice technique here. You can, again, look at this language. You're struck by, you're impressed by. The first impression is an immediate impression. Other examples. Let's say, for example, a beach holiday versus a mountain resort holiday. For example, one obvious difference is that beaches are very popular with sunbathers and swimmers. As soon as you see the sea, you're struck by how magical and impressive it is, stretching out beyond the horizon. General example, plus a feeling and immediate impression. Really good, natural, native speaker, high-scoring technique. The formula, again, is you can use this in any part of the test. Remember, Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. General example, opinion, your statement, plus feeling and impression, usually an adjective phrase. You're struck with, feeling or impression. For example, one obvious difference is that cities are large, busy and noisy. Immediately you're struck with how big they are and impressive. An animal, as in a pet, versus a wild animal. For example, one difference, one obvious difference, is that an animal in the wild is likely to be more violent and aggressive than a pet animal. As soon as you see a large animal in the wild, you're struck by how you are in their territory and they could attack you. So, general example plus feeling and immediate impression. That also functions as a supporting my point. So you're doing a couple of quite clever things in one go using this formula here. So in contrast to, this is a grammatical point, in contrast to versus in contrast. Country towns are generally peaceful, relaxing and calm, in contrast to cities that are busy. See my other example. Country towns are generally peaceful, relaxing and calm. In contrast, comma, pause, cities are very busy. See the difference? In contrast to cities, in contrast, cities are. So get this grammar right. I've put these words in bold for you. Country towns are generally peaceful, relaxing and calm, in contrast to cities that are very busy. Country towns are generally peaceful, relaxing and calm, in contrast, pause, cities are very busy. So what's the difference? Think about it, copy these patterns. So similarity and contrast markers. Both X and Y are. So these are different structures to use when comparing things. So both X and Y are, when you're saying that they're the same. X is ba 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 ba, unlike Y, which is ba 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 ba. X is similar to Y, they are both ba 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 ba. X is da da da, whereas Y is da da. X is different from Y in that Y is da na, but X is da na. X is da da da, contrary to Y, which is da da da. Again, notice the pausing. Go back, copy how I'm pausing there, because that really actually enables you to use these phrases well if you pause correctly. So similarity and contrast markers, examples. Both towns and cities can be stressful or are stressful. Living in a city is exciting, unlike living in towns, which is boring. Manchester is similar to York. They are both historical cities. My hometown is tiny and dull, whereas Beijing is big and stimulating. Office work is different to outdoor work, in that office work is comfortable, but outdoor work is active and good exercise. Towns are quiet and relaxing, contrary to cities that are stressful. Practice these patterns. Make sure you also, when speaking the sentences, you emphasize the adjectives, but the bits in bold I've put in this slide are the bits of grammar that people normally get wrong. So bear that in mind. The bold pieces here are what you should be aware of getting right grammatically. Similarity and contrast markers, let's look at it again. Both towns and cities are stressful. Living in a city is exciting, unlike living in towns, which is boring. Manchester is similar to York. They are both historical cities. My hometown is tiny and dull, whereas Beijing is big and exciting. Office work is different to outdoor work, in that office work is comfortable, but outdoor work is active and good exercise. Towns are quiet and relaxing, contrary to cities that are stressful. 3 phrases from my answer. Cities, however, provide many more opportunities to get involved in cultural activities. So these are 3 good phrases I used in my answer. Cities, however, provide many more opportunities to get involved in cultural activities. Provide many more opportunities to, or to get involved in. Cities also offer more in terms of job opportunities and chances to develop a career. However, city life is more expensive, stressful, and perhaps less healthy than life in a nice country town. So look at the patterns and structures, see the patterns and structures here for yourself, practice using them. So 3 phrases from my answer continued. Let's look at what the structures are. Actually, we've got a discourse marker, cities, however, plus provide many more opportunities, plus a good collocation to get involved in cultural activities. Second one, cities also offer more in terms of plus opportunities. This is quite a common collocation. Something offers more in terms of certain opportunities. A third one, however, a city is more expensive and stressful and perhaps less healthy. So this is using a comparative technique. Something is more or less than something else. So 3 different phrases and different techniques that we can all use to improve, to show our manipulation of different good structures in our answers. Discourse markers and comparatives, they are simple, but get them right. It's simple, but get it right. However, the food in the south is sweeter than the north. On the other hand, the people in warm places are more friendly than in colder places. Having said that, this is a great high-scoring structure. Having said that, cities are much more lively and fun than country towns, whereas younger people are more interested in bars and clubs than older people. So, people always lose marks because of persistent basic errors in the test. Don't forget to get these basics right, please. Correct them during your training and preparation phase. Then you will become more fluent. Then the rest will come together so much more easily and so much more naturally. Environmental concerns. Environmental concerns. Okay, so what are some of the environmental concerns that face your country today? A very typical Part 3 question. What are some of the environmental concerns that face your country today? Okay, well, there are a number of issues facing us today. The main issue seems to be global warming and the melting of the polar ice caps, caused by greenhouse emissions and overpopulation of the planet. Other major concerns are polluting the seas and oceans with plastic and endangered animals and their natural habitats. I strongly believe that humans should make it a top priority to address these issues immediately. Governments should encourage recycling and responsible waste disposal, invest in alternative and renewable energy, and reduce vehicle and factory emissions. They also need to implement stricter rules on hunting endangered animals for things like ivory. As individuals, we need to buy environmentally friendly products and try to reduce our carbon footprint. So you'll notice one thing about this answer. The question was talking about environmental issues facing your country today, but I answered about environmental issues facing the world today. Now that's okay. That's actually okay. But if the examiner follows up and challenges you a little bit and says, but what are the things that are facing your country today? You might want to say something like, well, to be honest, I think that we're all facing these problems, not just our country, but these things are problems for the whole world. So I chose to talk about the global issues. Now, there's a reason why I do this. It's because you get more examples if you make it a more global issue. You obviously will not lose points, but if you're challenged, remember to say this. Remember to say, well, I think that these are issues that face all countries. Right, so introducing our answer. So let's talk about the mechanics of my answer here. Succinctly, concisely like a native. Well, there are a number of issues facing us today. Simple, nice, native introduction. Well, there are a number of issues facing us today. Other advanced intro phrases you can learn to use as well might be, it's hard to know where to start. There's so many environmental concerns we need to address. Or, the environment is a key issue for the world today. The environment is a key issue for the world today. To be honest, I'm deeply concerned about this issue. We are now at a crucial point in history. Great introductions. Just remember these 3 and use them every time you're asked about the environment. Memorize these 3 phrases. To be honest, I'm deeply concerned about this issue. We are now at a crucial point in history. Great sentence. Very high scoring, natural sounding sentence. So please avoid these phrases. These are common Chinglish cliches and they sound awkward. They're awkward phrases. They don't sound native. They don't sound natural. They might get you a 6, but not much more. This is a hot topic today. We don't say this. This is a hot topic today. We don't really say this in English. It doesn't sound good. It sounds silly. With the development of society, don't say this. Too many candidates say this. Remember, I have examined for the IELTS speaking module for over 10 years, and every single day, many times, students say, with the development of society. You don't want to hear this. It's not really a very natural English phrase. With the development of technology. You know, try and avoid these. Every coin has two sides. Please don't say this. It just sounds so cliche. Students always say this, and it sounds too memorized, too cliche. And to be honest, I don't hear native speakers using this phrase almost ever. As we know, this is a hot topic today. Okay, so remember, avoid these phrases. Don't use them. Use my phrases instead. They'll get you higher marks and you'll sound more natural. Do not introduce your answer with these phrases. Don't use them at all anywhere. Right, identifying issues. So then in my answer I move on to identifying issues. Simply, but in a native way. The main issue seems to be global warming and the melting of the polar ice caps. Remember, these little phrases like seems to be are very important in English. You're not an environmental scientific expert, neither am I. So seems to be suggests I'm not totally sure, but from what I've heard in the news, from what I understand, it's a sign of being a bit more intelligent and educated. You're not just saying this is the fact. You're saying it seems to be like this. That's actually also quite polite. Because, you know, why pretend you're an expert when you're not? But it will, more importantly, score you higher because you'll just sound like you're using English in a more sophisticated, advanced way. The main issue seems to be global warming and the melting of the polar ice caps. One major concern today is, or seems to be. The biggest problem in my country is, or seems to be. We face one or two major problems today. The top priority today should be, in my opinion, the number one problem facing the world today is, or seems to be. The number one problem facing the world today seems to be this. So adding more issues. So we don't just want to mention one thing. Other major concerns are, pause, polluting the seas and oceans with plastic. Other major concerns are polluting the seas and oceans with plastic. Remember to leave a pause before a short list. One major concern is, another key issue is, another big problem that we need to address is, or seems to be. One more huge problem I'd like to mention is, again, 4 different ways to introduce more issues in a natural native speaker, high-scoring way. Learn them, use them flexibly. So, talking about problems and causes of those problems. The main issue seems to be global warming and the melting of the polar ice caps, caused by greenhouse emissions and overpopulation of the planet. So, intro phrase, plus problems, plus causes. Other major concerns are polluting the seas and oceans with plastic and endangered animals and their natural habitats. Intro phrase plus problems. So you don't have to say what the causes of the problems are. I'm just presenting it as a way of doing so, if you wish. So environmental problems, let's talk about this, because the environment comes up a lot at the moment in the world and in speaking tests. Global warming, environmental pollution, water pollution, air pollution, rising water levels caused by global warming, widespread flooding. So rising water levels cause widespread flooding. Rising water levels are caused by global warming. Notice the difference. Destruction of animal habitats, endangering wildlife or species, melting polar caps at the North and South Poles, plastic waste polluting the ocean, irreversible damage to the environment, irreversible damage that can't be repaired. At least we think it can't be repaired easily. Irreversible, irreversible. So causes, things we do to create these terrible effects. How do we cause these issues? Waste disposal, dumping waste, dumping plastic in the oceans, causes pollution and endangers marine life. Vehicle factory emissions, so vehicle emissions or factory emissions, causes air pollution or pollutes the air. Polluting the environment, contaminating the water, damages or causes damage to these natural resources that we need to grow food and vegetables. Overfishing the seas and oceans causes lack of marine life or damage to marine life or endangering marine animals. Deforestation, cutting down jungles and rainforests, causes acid rain, causes or contributes to global warming. Killing animal life or threatening wildlife, hunting elephants for ivory, using fossil fuels, burning coal for electricity causes a lot of air pollution and also contributes towards global warming. So these are things we do which cause problems with the environment. So get these phrases right, because environment phrases are actually quite topic specific. Okay, causes, effect and cause. Causes and effects, problems and their causes. The main issue seems to be global warming and the melting of the polar ice caps, caused by greenhouse emissions and overpopulation of the planet. Marine pollution is caused by waste disposal in the oceans. Rising seawater levels is a result of global warming. Global warming is caused by burning fossil fuels. Now, do you see what's going on here? I'm mixing the examples intentionally. Your level is high enough to grasp this and not confuse it. Problem plus is caused by or is a result of plus cause. Get these structures right. You'll sound natural, native. Just memorize these structures. Practice using them so you can throw them into your part 3 in the speaking test, or your part 2 or part 1. So, cause and effect. Example. Factories outside the city are causing terrible air pollution. See? Different structure here. Slightly different. Dumping waste in the ocean is causing marine pollution. Global warming is resulting in, remember the in, is resulting in rising sea levels and melting ice caps. Burning fossil fuels is contributing to global warming. Cause is causing problem. Cause is resulting in problem. Cause is contributing to problem. Get those prepositions right, or you basically will lose marks on grammar. So, Causes, more advanced phrases we've been practicing. Putting causes into native speaker phrases. Careless waste disposal is causing a build-up of plastic in our oceans. This is a great sentence. Careless waste disposal. That's a lexical chunk. That's a word group. Memorize that. Careless waste disposal is causing a build-up, an accumulation, a build-up, an increased amount of plastic in our oceans. Vehicle and factory emissions are polluting our air. Dumping toxic waste is contaminating the soil. Overfishing is resulting in a depletion of fish and animal life. A depletion is a reduction, a significant reduction in the amount of something. A depletion of fish and marine life. Deforestation contributes to the rise of greenhouse gases. Destroying wildlife is detrimental to our ecosystem as a whole. Destroying wildlife is detrimental to our ecosystem as a whole. Hunting for ivory will soon result in extinction of the species. In this case, the species is the elephant species. Hunting for ivory, the tusks of elephants, will soon result in the extinction of the species. Using fossil fuels contributes to air pollution and global warming. Contributes to. So again, you can memorize these phrases as well, but when you do memorize a phrase or a sentence, make sure you understand the mechanics of it and how it works. Approaching solutions. Phrases related to solutions. Governments need to come up with long-term solutions. To come up with a solution means to think of and decide on something. That's a good phrase. Governments need to come up with long-term solutions, not just solutions for tomorrow or the next day, but for the long-term future. It's absolutely vital we address these issues. We should change our ways before it's too late. We need to recycle waste and stop dumping. We must promote wildlife preservation. We must encourage wildlife preservation. We should use environmentally friendly products. We should stop burning fossil fuels. It's essential we develop clean energy, or we develop more clean energy. We should reduce our carbon footprint. Okay, so these are suggestions towards solutions. So talking about visions. A vision is like a hope you have for the future. Say what our hopes are for the future in a short phrase. I really hope we can solve these problems for the sake of the planet. It would be great if we could get our priorities right and save the planet. For our own good, I sincerely hope we can make the world a better place for animals and humans. I hope one day we can solve all of these problems. So, simple phrases, but they're good also when we want to conclude or approach a kind of conclusion. So, task. I'd like you to think about and write and then read aloud answers to these questions. Please use lots of the language and lexical chunks and word groups and correct grammar that we've learnt today in practice. So, what are the most important issues facing the planet today? What dangers to wildlife exist today, and how should we try to address them? What is the biggest problem facing life on Earth now, and what can we do about it? What are some of the similarities and differences between going on holiday to a city and a countryside location? So see here, the first three questions are about the environment. The last question is actually kind of different. It's similarities and difference questions about going on holiday to a city and a countryside location. Because remember, that's how our lesson started. So I want you to remember, there's two sort of topics going on in this lesson. They're slightly separate. Doesn't matter. Practice them all. So what are some of the similarities and differences between going on holiday to the city and a countryside location? Okay, think, plan your answers, write them, check them, correct them, read them out loud. That's a good way to practice. Yes, you won't be able to do this in part 3 of the speaking test, but this is, remember, we're training ourselves for it now. This is a great way to practice. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next lesson.